polls tell us something, but they don't tell us everything. They don't tell us how people are going to show up on election day. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation, live from Stein Studios in Ratmalana, right here at 9:30 p.m. on TV1. Tonight on the show, our topic of discussion revolves around the main topic, which is the run-up to the presidential elections. We've invited the three guests to our studios, however, one pulled out at the last minute. Let me introduce our guest this evening. Joining us tonight on the show is Harsha Nanaikar, attorney at law representing the National People's Power. Thank you very much, Harsha, for joining us on the show tonight. Also joining us tonight on the show is Rasika Jayakodi, political commentator affiliated to the United National Party. Thank you very much, Rasika, for joining us as well. And we did invite Premnath Dulawata, attorney at law and convener of the Truth Seekers Association, affiliated to the Sri Lanka Pujana Peramuna. However, Premnath at around 8:45 p.m. excused himself from the show tonight. So let's start off tonight's show with Harsha Nanaikar, attorney at law representing the National People's Power. Harsha, big task at hand. What will happen on the 16th of November 2019?
Now, 16th of November is not going to be merely another election day. I believe the people, the public here has a larger responsibility than just changing a government. It's about, we believe, changing a system. Because changing governments are easy. Every election you can change a government. But what the public is asking for is a change of the system. So what we have done, alternatively, we have come forward with our set of policies, promising an alternative political culture, and an alternate way of governing, because we feel for the last so many years that we were losing direction. And I don't want to go into detail in my introduction, but I believe 16th is a day that people have to take very seriously and go to the polling station, not with emotions of anger towards another candidate or favoritism towards another, but they must evaluate what happened in the past, be well informed, have the knowledge, and make a conscious choice as to how to take the country forward. But I feel the electorate is highly polarized into the two main camps on various grounds. Sometimes it's purely emotional, in the sense, ego. Sometimes you feel, I'm going to vote for this person because I really don't like my next door neighbor who's supporting the guy that I don't like. So things of that nature.
Very quickly, Harsha, before I move on to Rasika, there are 4 candidates vying for the top job in Sri Lanka among the 35 candidates who gave in their nomination papers to the Elections Commissioner a few days ago. You have Sajid Premadas contesting under the Swan symbol. You have Sri Lanka Pujana Peramuna candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa. You have the NPM candidate Maheshwara Naika, and then you have Anukumar Disanaika, who is the leader of the JVP and also representing the National People's Power movement, contesting the elections. Where do you place the NPM or the NPP in this equation? NPP. Now, basically what I'm saying is that we have a hope. We do not field candidates just for the sake of it. We have fielded a candidate with a policy, with the expectation to win the election. That's our expectation, that's our hope. So we are asking the people to gather around our hope and our policy. So while there's a main push towards the two main camps, as it has been traditionally, we are hoping this time the electorate will do it differently, and there's a silent wave of distrust towards the two main camps, and that will work in our favor. Thank you very much, Harsha Nanaikar, attorney at law representing the National People's Power movement. The NPP would be represented by Anukumar Disanaika, leader of the Janata Vimukti Peramuna. I now move attention to Rasika Jayakodi, political commentator affiliated to the United National Party. Rasika, the inaugural meeting of the United National Party, the symbol of the swan, which will be contesting at the next presidential election, saw a majority of individuals from Colombo and the suburbs attending the rally in question at Golface Green. However, it's evident that just because there are people at a public rally does not in any way mean that you have got the top job or you have secured the top job, because we have seen that in the past as well. So what are your thoughts on that?
Shamil, yes, I agree with you. Political rallies are all about optics, how you project yourself to your supporters and to the public at large. So in that sense, the UNP's inaugural rally last week was a major success because it's arguably the biggest ever political rally ever held in Sri Lanka. So in that sense, I must tell you that it was a major success and the energy levels were high. There was high level of enthusiasm on the part of the supporters, and every leader at the top rung of the UNP came together. They sent out a strong message to the supporters saying, to the effect that they are all together and they're wholeheartedly backing the DNF New Democratic Front candidate. So in that sense, the UNP's rally is a massive success, and it's a good starting point for a vibrant campaign. Mr. Premadasa is expected to address over 150 rallies across the country during the campaign period. So this rally was a good start.
Month away from the presidential elections, do you think that Sajid Premadasa would be able to secure the top job?
Of course, I think he's well on his path to secure the top job, and there's a massive grassroots level support for him. He's a leader who emerged from the grassroots level. Because of that, I think the election machinery is in full swing. Everyone, I mean, from polling booth agents to activists on the ground, they are all campaigning for him, and very high energy levels. This is what I see.
Thank you very much, Rosika Jayakuti, political commentator affiliated to the United National Party. I now open the floor for questions from our two journalists. Deshan Gunawala onto my immediate left, and onto my far left is Shehan Ranatunga. Let's start off with Shehan.
Thank you, Shamir. If I could first pose my first question to Mr. Hassan Anekara. Firstly, can we get what were your thoughts on the outcome of the Alpitia Pradeshya Sabha election? What is your reading on this? How seriously do you take that result in light of the upcoming presidential elections?
To be honest, I doubt whether the Alpitia result reflects the mood of the entire nation. Also remember, these were the same nominees as was in 2017, because it was reheld for the same nominations. So although we saw, I mean, it was anyway a put to a stronghold, even at that time, and the general sentiment cannot be judged by Alpitia, because I remember at one point, if I'm not mistaken, when Mahinda Rajapaksa got 59% from there, the following elections he lost, I mean, nationally. So, and also we must understand, local elections are normally used by the public to show their dissatisfaction of the main government, to criticize the government of the day. That's how local elections have always been utilized. So therefore, I don't think it's that great. But as far as the NPP is concerned, one of our constitution partners is the JVP, who has got a massive hike in their voter base with 2 seats in. So we are very happy with that achievement, because on the previous one, there was none. So to answer your question short, I honestly don't think it's...
How important is?
Mr. Nanakar, but you have to also remember the fact that the size of the Sabha was increased. So it's only natural that even if you get the same number of votes, that your number of seats will increase, same proportion of votes. But see, Tissamaharama used to be a stronghold of the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, which was, like you said, was a stronghold.
Correct.
In Tissamaharama, you all have lost. Does that mean the JVP, which again is the main constituent of the NPP, does that mean when the JVP were given an opportunity to govern a locality, that the people have been dissatisfied? Why else would they vote them out in that case?
No, you have to understand the situation at that time, because they ran the municipality for 2 successive terms. The last term ended, I will tell you how it ended also. During the first one, people were very happy, things were happening very well. In fact, they won twice the best municipality award for the entire nation also. But on the second term, you may recall, during the Rajapaksa tenure, they brought an allegation against the last, I think in 2008 or something, of some financial fraud on the part of the chairman of the Pradesh Sabha. That is simply because he refused to give one of the grounds to hold a political rally for the Rajapaksa team at that time. So that thereafter it was taken under the governor or some other center, it was taken off. But in 2010, by that time, in 2011, by that time, Mahinda Rajapaksa has won the war. So the entire country, there was a massive wave going towards Rajapaksa. So that's how we lost this Pradesh Sabha, not necessarily because people were dissatisfied. That's my point.
But where does it stand in terms of the JVP as well as the NPP's policy agenda? When it comes to economics, it seems that the party is not voicing its concern or opinions about the country's economic policy. However, you see the NPP speaking very vociferously about corruption, about good governance, about rule of law, and so on and so forth. However, when you're a statesman or head of state, you have to speak about economic policy. You have to speak about diplomacy. You have to speak about bipartisan policy, so on and so forth. There's so much on the table. And why is it that the NPP is only focusing on an area where they're really comfortable with speaking about?
No, quite the contrary. We are the only party at the moment who's talking about the economy and how to uplift it and repay the debt. If you look at AKD, I would shorten it as AKD. AKD speaks very well of how to pay back our $11 trillion loan, how to increase local production, how to deal with foreign countries, how to get into agreements. We speak all of that, especially on our policy document. You can find it on www.nio.lk. And also the more concise one is coming out pretty soon on stage by stage. So actually, quite the contrary, we are the only ones who are saying how to increase local production. We are the only ones who are talking about the economic policy we want to have and how to have a system of proper governance and overseas contacts.
Would I be wrong to say that the NPP is a result of a project now for the JVP to rebrand itself?
No, you're wrong. I would not agree with that. For the simple reason, now I am actually a member of, not the JVP, I'm a member of NIO, National Intellectuals Organization, which is a constituent partner of the NPP. Now, NPP is created by, we started off with 28 different organizations. Now there are 32 of them. And there are no leaders for NPP. It has a leadership council. Basically, there's no author for NPP. We were people who individually worked on various different fields, but we got together because we knew struggling alone won't do. So in our council, there are 2 members from each organization who has the same say. Just because JP has a bigger, they are more popular and have a bigger voter base, right, doesn't mean that they have a bigger say in that. So therefore, I would not consider this as JP rebranding itself, which they could have done on their own. But even our policies have changed. But to answer my friend there, we are the only party again on this platform, right? We speak about economics, we speak about other education and other policies. But also, have you noticed how this time from the platform, fighting against corruption, arresting corrupt people are not coming up at all in the main 2 camps? Not in the UMP camp, not on the Gotabek.
Harshana,
I wonder why is that?
When I just visited our website, NIO.lk, the National Intellectuals Organization, it says the NIO upholds the following values and principles in all its activities. A, equality and equity, accountability, responsibility and transparency, respect and tolerance and non-violence, self-reliance and solidarity, fairness and justice.
Correct.
Where is economic policy here?
Go down the page. It's in a separate chapter.
I'm on the page
It's
right now.
112
I
pages.
really can't see economic
There are
policy.
112 pages. Go through the thing. I'll tell you which chapter it is.
Yeah. So we're
There are
talking
112
about.
pages.
No, we'll get to that in a moment. We're talking about the values and principles that you all uphold in all your activities. Tell us a little bit.
Look at from page number 63. You will find it.
Tell us a little bit about accountability, responsibility, and transparency. How do you think that the NPP would do things differently than the 2 main political parties, that is the New Democratic Front as well as the SLPP or the NPM for that matter?
Well, I will first try to focus on the UMP camp as well as the other camp, because NPM I have a different explanation with them. First and foremost, we believe in upholding rule of law and democracy, accountability and transparency, by simply making sure that we appoint people based on their merits, not on family connections. And we are having zero tolerance policy for corruption. Now, if you remember how this government came into power in 2015, was mainly by arguing against corruption, saying that they are going to arrest all the corrupt people. But over the years, you saw things got delayed, and basically those who should be spending jail terms are now actually contesting in elections. So therefore, we firmly believe no matter whatever the system you write on books, no matter whatever you say, every system has to be run by human beings at the end of the day. And we believe in appointing people without court cases, without corruption allegations to start off with. And in that way, we can make this accountable from the beginning, because corruption has to be eliminated completely for any country to...
Let's say hypothetically, the NPP's candidate, that is the JVP candidate, emerges victorious at the November 16th presidential election. Hypothetically. Let's leave it there.
It could very well be, who knows, yeah.
In the event that does happen, who would be in the cabinet of Anukumara Dissanayake? They only have 4 members in parliament at present. Who would represent the cabinet?
Now, if you look at NIO itself, even in this policy document, their names are not being mentioned, but we were divided ourselves for 10 different subjects. These subjects were prepared by those who are experts in agriculture with proper qualifications, and most of these people are professionals. Almost all of them are professionals who are capable. Right now, why you're saying there are only 4 people is because you're focusing on JVP. I'm asking you to focus on NPP, and I'm not finding fault with you or the public for not knowing who we are, right? Because we have not really come out with our persons.
No, but it boils down, Harshan, at the end of the day, to bolts and nuts about running a cabinet. The JVP, which is the ruling party that your candidate is coming from, NPP, will not have members to represent a particular cabinet. If that is the case, Anukumara Dissanayake will have to join hands with another political party. So which political party would they join hands with until April next year, when a general election will be convened?
We will not join hands with any political party. Firstly, because we have the people. We have the people. This is what you assumed in your question, that we don't have people to fill in a cabinet. That's what you assumed. And that is wrong assumption, but I won't find fault with you for that. Why? Because we have not announced them yet. Soon they will be. In fact, we have enough in our 32 organizations who are capable of running.
I want to move to...
one second, let me answer you, because you assumed a couple of things in that we are going to join hands with another political force.
No, I'm not in any way saying that you all will join hands.
No,
but what is the option
in your
available
question presume
for you?
that. Your question, did it presume that you're going to...
Let's say there is a budget for the year 2020.
Right.
How is Anukumara Dissanayake, the NPP candidate?
We can only appoint a cabinet after the next general election. If we win the general election, no, not after this presidential.
So Anukumara
Dissanayake will have to. But Anukumara Dissanayake will have...
has said he's not putting a budget in for the year 2020.
Okay.
So up until the next general election, the country needs to function. For which purpose either a budget or some financial bill needs to pass with 6 MPs.
Till the NPP team is inside the parliament, it will be run by the JVP and not by the NPP, because only JP members are there.
But what is the NPP's
So there are only 4 members.
Who will run that government?
There are only 4 members of parliament.
JVP. That's correct. What I'm trying to say is that till the NPP gets into the parliament, right, till the general elections held, I cannot predict anything, because it will be run the same way JP has been running for the last 5 years, because it's JP. But I'm talking for NPP. The only involvement for JP for us is that we are having Anukumara as our leader for this presidential candidate business only, not a leader, presidential candidate. But right now what's inside the parliament is JP, so they will handle it the way they do, and I cannot be explaining to you what the JP is going to do, because they decide on the Politburo decisions.
Rasika, do you think the UNP will support the JVP in an instance where the NPP's candidate becomes the president of this country?
I think that's too hypothetical to to answer that question. I mean,
will Ranil Wickremesinghe still be the prime minister at the time?
That's a major decision.
Rasika, how important is momentum in a presidential election? And I'm coming back to the Alpitia election result. Would you say that was a positive shift for the SLPP? Was it a negative for the UNP? And if I can just couple one other thing, the delayed announcement of Sajith Premadasa, was it done with the intention of building some momentum close to election date, or is it because of a split in the party?
No, I think within the UNP there were several schools of thought on who the candidate should be. there was an internal discussion in the party. It was a healthy debate. It was not an unhealthy debate, and various groups presented their viewpoints on who the candidate should be, and finally everyone came to the agreement that Sajith Premadasa would be the ideal candidate to win the next presidential election. So that was the thought process. It was not an intentional attempt to delay the nomination of the candidate or anything of that sort. But in the end, it all turned out to be that there was in a race. So if you look at any athletic event, the medal goes to the person who finishes the race first, not for the one who starts it first. So I think that's what happened to the SLPP. So they announced the candidate much earlier.
So once again, your analysis of the Alpitia result.
Okay, Alpitia, the UNP was not expecting to win Alpitia. So that's the reality, because Alpitia is a stronghold of the Rajapaksa camp. So therefore, Alpitia result was not a surprise in that sense. But the UNP, I think, again, the thought process was that it would be somewhere around like above 30%. So 24%. We are not elated about the result, but we think it's a start. It's a start. At the same time, we see a silver lining, because the SLPP also hasn't got the results they expected. Their SLPP has got 56%, and 13% has been obtained by UPFA. So because of that, we think Alpitia is not a bad start.
Rasika, I think I asked you this question the last time you were here. Is the United National Party, or was the United National Party, ready with a manifesto or ready with a plan on where this country needs to go at the point at which their candidate was announced? Because we still have no manifestos put out by either of the parties. But I think at a press conference recently, the SLPP MP said we are waiting for the UNP to put out their manifesto first. But Gotabaya Rajapaksa had Viatmaga around him. Gotabaya Rajapaksa had Elia around him. He had these speakers. Does the UNP have a manifesto ready? Are they putting it together? And who's putting it together?
Of course. In any political party, the manifesto is put together by different committees. That's how the process works. Even in the SLPP, I trust that's how it works. There are different committees appointed to overlook different sections, different segments, like for trade, for economy, for sports, culture. That's how it works. So these different committees draft their policies. They work on the manifesto, and finally they all, in the end, like a final committee, puts everything together and release the manifesto to the public. So UNP is in the process of.
Does the UNP have a committee on technology, Rasika? Do you think you are actively involved?
I'm not privy to.
Not in the manifesto committee, but does the UNP have a policy on?
Of course, if you look at Mr. Sajith Premadasa addressed several events in the past 2 weeks. So he addressed the Mega Mines event.
That's something I want to speak to about. Mega Mines. I think this is something that has created a bit of confusion on social media, Rasika, and I'm going to ask you directly.
Yeah.
You know what artificial intelligence is.
Okay.
I know what artificial intelligence is. Shamir is a bit on the older side, but I'm sure he knows what artificial intelligence is also. Playing a video, having a guy speak into a mic, and have somebody ask them questions. That's not artificial intelligence.
It's a demonstration. It's a demonstration of.
It's a demonstration of artificial intelligence.
Yes, a demonstration of how it works. Because the public, if you look at the public, they don't know. A lot of them are probably like Shamir. They don't know.
I want to
Rasika, I need to be very honest here. I know a lot about artificial intelligence because I was at Ocotber recently doing a program on artificial intelligence and deep machine learning and so on and so forth. So tell me a little bit about what do you mean by artificial intelligence when you say the country is going to be driven towards artificial intelligence when the Sri Lankan government thus has not allocated any money on innovation or anything of that sort?
I think that is one area where the UNP is going to really focus on in the next 5 years, because Mr. Premadasa clearly said here he will move towards a digital knowledge economy which is based on intellectual capital, which means that this involves a strong focus on research and development sector. For instance, Sri Lanka, Shamir, if you take 1 million people, we have only about 99 researchers. If you take a country like Israel, for 1 million people, it has about 8,200 researchers. So you can see where we stand in terms of research and development. So
let's forget about artificial intelligence for the moment. Let's park that aside. Let's talk about the realistic goals that the country can achieve. Let's talk about the startup fraternity that should be brought into the limelight. Let's talk about forecasting. Let's talk about deep machine learning. Let's talk about how we can move forward. Let's keep artificial intelligence aside. Artificial intelligence itself is a very big subject to talk about. But let's talk about basic things. Let's talk about the startup fraternity that can be molded and nurtured and brought into the next level. Let's talk about things like that, which is possible for us to do.
Yes, yes. And I think startup community, the biggest problem concerning the startup community is that the frameworks in Sri Lanka, there's no right infrastructure framework for startup community. The taxation is too complex, and there are so many regulations preventing people from forming their own companies, starting businesses, forming startups. So these are the areas the UNP is looking at. In 1977, when the UNP came to power under President Jayawardena, there was wide-ranging reforms, revolutionizing every aspect of the country's economy. I think a similar approach is needed this time, not to usher in open economy. I mean, it was done in 1977. This time, we need to power startups. We need to power new businesses. We need to give more opportunities to young professionals working in various segments. I mean, they are the backbone.
But what is, Rasika, it's all well and good to say all this. It looks like a rosy picture, but it's not easy. Let's talk about India for an example. India established the Niti Aayog policy tank, which deals with sustainable development as well as the startup fraternity is being governed completely by Niti Aayog, where 2% of the GDP is being allocated for innovation in India. Let's talk about the United Kingdom for an example. 4% of its GDP has been allocated for innovation.
Yeah. In Sri Lanka,
how much of money?
In Sri Lanka, the habit has been always like 0.1%.
Is Sajid Premadasa, if he's elected, the president of the country, going to allocate for innovation?
Yes.
Do you all even have a policy document that speaks deeply about artificial intelligence, deep machine learning, forecasting, about robotics, so on and so forth?
Yeah, so Mr. Premadasa has clearly stated that he will power the research and development segment. That means he will allocate a considerable amount of money on empowering innovation. Right now, it stands at 0.1% of our GDP, which is not enough and which will not take the country anywhere. So if Mr. Premadasa's policy has been allocating a larger amount of money, a larger percentage of the GDP for innovation. I'm not aware of the exact number. Probably it will come in the manifesto. It will probably reveal during the campaign period. But certainly, more than, I mean, right now it's abysmal.
But Rasika, you know that having an event and saying it's artificial intelligence is not the way to move forward.
Shamir, it's like this.
Yeah.
You have to first demonstrate to the public how it works. I mean, a lot of them don't have any idea about artificial intelligence.
You demonstrate how it works with a system, Rasika. You don't demonstrate how it works with a video and a guy speaking with a mic.
I mean, it's a demonstration. Again, it's a demonstration.
No, because we had business tycoon Dhammika Pereira recently speaking about artificial intelligence and how the hospital sector could be turned into deep machine learning. However, he was not talking about artificial intelligence. He was talking about forecasting, and there is a big gap between what algorithms and what forecasting is all about.
But don't you consider what Mr. Premadasa did was at least a good start? I mean, instead of focusing on a very narrow segment of economy, he actually made an attempt to.
But the word itself looks very complex. The words itself looks very good to hear. The words itself looks very fancy. But even the UNP presidential candidate or the NDF presidential candidate does not understand what artificial intelligence is all about. That's the point here.
Not really. I mean, in the end, what he said was, artificial intelligence will be used effectively to for the decision-making process within the government. That's the basic idea, right?
I also want to remind our viewers that we did invite Sri Lanka Pojana Perimuna member Premanath Dulawat, attorney at law and also the convener of the Truth Seekers Association, to join us this evening, but he pulled out at around 8:45 p.m. when we didn't have any other option but to leave a seat empty to show that he excused himself. So I want to move very quickly to Harshan Anakara. Harshan Anakara, I just visited your website that you just mentioned, www.neo.lk. Am I right?
Yep.
Right. So I'm on your page. While Rasika and my colleagues were posing questions to the two of you, I was able to run through your website.
Yeah.
So you all have two publications that have been released. One is the Rata Rakina Rata Hadana Janatavadi Palnek Sandha Vidvat Pilagasma,
Correct.
which has 16 pages, and I couldn't find a 63 page, the page number 63.
Really? No,
and then there is
no,
another document which says Godinagamun Sri Lanka, and there is no download.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In
but
that
I have the manual
either.
here. It has
So I could
website
not, being somewhat technical savvy, minus what Deshan said,
I'm
I
sorry.
couldn't
It
get
was
hold
there. I
of
downloaded
the
it.
particular document in question.
Right.
And that is the very reason that I have a iPad, because we are quite tech savvy on the show. So Harshana, again, the problem is, even in the Rata Rakina Rata Hadana Janatavadi Palnak Sandha Vidvat Pelagasma, you all do not articulate an economic policy, an economic vision.
But I can give you the book here.
The book, of course, may have, but I don't have that with me right now.
I know that.
And there is no download on the particular website that you said as
We
well. I'm
do
going on the basis what you just told me a couple of minutes ago.
We do articulate on that.
So tell us, by 2021, where does the Janata Vimukti Peramuna or the NPP envisages to take the country's economy to? We're now at a 3.9%, 3% economic growth.
Right.
Where does the NPP envisage the country's economy to be at by the end of next year?
Right. First and foremost, I must confess I'm not an economic expert, so therefore I'm not going to give you percentages.
Right.
But I will give you the program.
The framework or the program.
The framework. We do have that. Because this was prepared by our senior lecturer.
No problem at all. I totally understand. As an attorney at law,
so I will not give you
privy to that
percentages. But
yes, of course.
Yes. Basically, we believe right now the country's income is around 2,000 billion a year, whereas we have repayment of loans and other installments running to about 1,800, right? So we are left with about 200 billion. So we seriously have to increase our revenue. Now, right now, the governments are hell-bent on increasing taxes and taxing the public. But we rather believe, I mean, first you have to widen the tax. You can't keep on digging deep on the tax files that has come. Now there's slab even at 24%. So to do that, we must get the medium and the small scale entrepreneur more chances to do their businesses. So we firmly believe the private sector is very important. They have a very important role to play. But however, on an economic policy and a plan created by the government, we have to understand the amount of land left for agriculture, that's around 11%, and how to use modern technology to have increased yields, and then we have some minerals, we have minerang, that is graphite, that right now we are exporting them in their raw form, no value-added form. In fact, we can do that by establishing factories at these places, because if I'm not mistaken, that the graphite one, they are selling raw, a ton is around $2,000 or so. Whereas at the COPE committee, you would have seen, they came and informed that if you refine them properly, you can sell a kilo at $5,000. Even if you take cinnamon, we have been wrapping them the same way, like, like some firewood, but you can have value-added production. So first and foremost, we believe in producing that. Secondly, and the most important thing for us is the location of this land, right? We can use our location to our advantage, mainly on the shipping side, as well as improving the harbors and protecting them. However, our main target, I mean, we don't have any gold or oil, is the human capital we have. So we have to advance the human, because right now, education is very important. Instead of exporting housemaids to Kuwait.
So no selling of state sector assets?
No way. Whatever is ours, no way. But we will get into agreements with foreign nations which are beneficial in order to bring in technology, to bring in more expertise. And will we take loans? Yes, we will take loans.
Isn't that against the policies of the Janata Vimukti Peramuna?
Maybe, because we are not the Janata Vimukti Peramuna. We are NPP. So it's very easy.
It's already confusing. It's already confusing, Harshana. Unfortunately, you say NIO is involved. You say the NPM is involved. NPP is involved, and then you say the JVP.
Let me explain that aspect to you first.
So then you say JVP is involved, and I'm trying to figure out. What is the policy that is driving the NPP?
It is the policy that NPP has prepared. Basically, National People's Power is a collective, is an organization with 32 other different organizations, where JP is one of them, and NIO, where I belong to, is one of them. And if you want, there's a huge list. I can read out the people, which will just take time. So, therefore, what we are doing is, now, this document is now being further explained by policy documents we are releasing one at a time. Today we released the education policy. So one at a time we are releasing because we want to go into more depth, because this is too much of summary. So therefore don't expect the NPP to follow lock, stock and barrel the JP policies. That's not going to happen, because JP is having an equal say just like us. So there's no need for confusion. I mean, I understand because we are very new, so therefore the confusion arises. But it is very important to understand, we are carrying out a common policy that has been agreed by our organizations, the NPP. So you can't just hold us, okay, fine, you are doing this, but JP is different. No, that means they have come to an understanding with us to carry on this policy. So your question is, if you ask me the question, I think I kind of lost the question.
No.
I'm sorry.
The question is, Archana, it's rather confusing, the NPP policies, because you have the NIO and then you have the JVP, which has very different thinking when it comes to the country's economy. And
I'm very sorry that you can't download it at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't think there's, fine, I do understand some.
Because I'm going by the past. Let's rewind ourselves to the 2015 presidential election in Sri Lanka. On the 8th of January, there was a neutral president who was elected by the people for good governance. However, several weeks after, the president who was appointed through the NDF took over the helm of the president of the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, and then there was somewhat of SLFP policies being embedded within the framework. And now you all have a similar arrangement with the NPP as well. You have the leader of the party of the NPP is from the JVP, and then you all have 31 other organizations supporting this individual in question. You're trying to figure out right now what's happening. Whose policies are going to reign supreme? Is it JVP or the NPP or the NIO or the 31 other organizations that are involved within this framework?
It will be the NPP policies, which is being formulated with the consent of the 32 parties, including the JVP and NIO.
How sure are you that the leader of the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, Anukumara Dissanayaka, will abide with the manifesto that has been issued by the NPP?
He's an honest man who's not corrupt. So therefore, he will follow. He has explained with his conduct for the last 25 years, he can be trusted. That's why.
Mr. Nanekar, in further to what Shamir asked, we must remember that even the Yahapala government was a coalition government.
Correct.
And that failed. So how does the NPP ensure that there's no repeat and there's not a falling out among the coalition, which then affects the country?
There won't be a fall, because see, now if you look at the Yahapala government, which, to be honest, even I voted for at that time. I was not actively involved in politics. There was no NPP at that time. Now, the Yahapalana government, the moment they came into power, they forgot why they were elected into power in the first place. To fight corruption, to stop nepotism, to take the country forward with rule of law and democracy. But instead, Maithripala Sirisena wanted to create his own power base. Ranil wanted to create his own power base. There was like towing all over the place. So they failed. But why we are different is this. We are different because this time around, we found like-minded individuals. This time we found people, none of them have corruption allegations against us or wasting public resources. So this time around, we are 100% certain that we do have the right crowd and we won't fall apart. But there's another important thing. At the same time, now, when someone comes into an organization, we can only judge them by their previous conduct, right? What they have done in the past. If they have any cases against them or they have done something terribly wrong, then we won't take them in. But once we take them in, what if they do something wrong? We have a mechanism to remove them too. Not give them minister portfolios if they do something wrong, but to remove them. It applies equally to me, any other member of the NPP. It applies to Anukumara Dissanayaka too. So therefore, we are 100% sure that our coalition won't fall like that.
Also, you were talking about the economic policies.
Yeah.
There's, just to bring up an issue which is fresh in people's minds,
Please.
strikes.
Please.
Throughout the Yahapalana government, the tenure, we've seen frequent protests and strikes.
Yeah.
How does the MPP intend to deal with that issue?
Sincere negotiations. When ministers engage in negotiations just to delay without giving them their rights, right, then these things do happen. Now, if you ask me, okay, what is the specific issue in the medical sector or specific issue in this sector, I will not be able to answer. But sincere negotiations, looking into their anomalies of salary scales and being sincere about it. What's happening right now is the MPs are enjoying all the money and the power by draining the public purse, where the public servant is not getting a fair share of it. That's the biggest problem we have. I mean, whereas MPs get a pension after 5 years of being in the parliament, others have to toil about 65, 60 years to get it. So when people feel there's an injustice, they will not listen to you. One of the reasons why there are so many strikes is they feel it's pointless negotiating with the rulers who are not sincere. So we will engage in negotiations, but one thing for sure, we will not, any professional, take the government to ransom either. But it has to be sincere negotiations to end strikes.
Mr. Jayakodi, now that the 19th Amendment has been passed, the next president will be the weakest when you consider the executive powers of the president. So the real power is in the hands of the parliament. What is Sajid Premadasa going to do should he become president?
And who will he have as his prime minister, you think?
Or will he take back executive powers?
No, the selection of prime minister is very clear in the constitution. It says the MP who commands the majority support in the house. So the MP who commands the majority support in the house at that particular point will be made the prime minister. That's very simple. So we don't have to name names or anything. We'll go by the constitution, right?
If you were to name who you think as a UNP activist is the MP who commands the support of majority in the house, that would be?
I mean, when it was tested last time, it was Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe.
Right.
I mean, that, as far as the numbers are concerned. Right?
Rasika, has the United National Party been able to create somewhat unity amongst the party? We saw how Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca was criticizing Sajid Premadasa at one point. We saw former Finance Minister Ravi Karunayaka criticizing Sajid Premadasa at one point. However, they say there are no friends or enemies in politics. At the inaugural rally, we saw all these individuals speaking on behalf of the candidature of Sajid Premadasa from the NDF. But the real question is there bad air still persistent between these individuals in question?
Not at all. I mean, when it mattered, they all came together. I mean, when there were various opinions in the party about who the candidate should be, different MPs had different opinions, and I think that's perfectly understandable. But when it mattered, when they made a final decision, they all supported Mr. Premadasa at the working committee. Everyone unanimously they chose Mr. Premadasa as the presidential candidate.
During Sajid Premadasa's speech at the inaugural rally of the NDF, he says that the top position at the security establishment would be given to Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca. Does that mean that Field Marshal Sarath Fonseca will be the Minister of Defence, or does it mean that he's going to be the Minister of Law and Order?
So, in that case, Shamir, I had to go by Mr. Premadasa's word. He said the top position, the highest responsibility in the defence, in the national security establishment. That's what he said. Jatika Arakshana Yantrane in Sinhala, right? In that setting, in that establishment, the highest responsibility will be given to Field Marshal Fonseca because he is the most experienced person in the current government to administer the affairs of that, that
Was
office.
that statement in particular made? I know that you can't speak on behalf of Sajid Premadasa, but as a political commentator affiliated to the United National Party, you can probably give us some light or shed some light on the statement that was made by Sajid Premadasa as the NDF candidate. Did he say that because the SLPP is being headed by the former Defence Secretary and the NPM is headed by a general who's also an army commander, Was that statement made in response to those candidatures or candidates being in the fray?
No, I think Mr. Premadasa made it very clear. He said that's because Field Marshal Fonseca was the man who led the military forces during the final phase of war. That means he is the most experienced man to handle the job in this country. So it is completely based on Mr. Fonseca's ability to handle the job, nothing else.
Right.
It's nothing about what Mr. Rajapaksa brings to the table. It's nothing about what General Seranayake brings to the table. It's all about Mr. Fonseca's ability to handle the job.
Rasika, at an event in Colombo just a few days prior to the inaugural rally of the NDF, Dr. Harsha De Silva, addressing the media, said that we are not surrounded by any corrupt individuals. We are far away from that. Look at the people surrounding Sajith Premadasa. All of them have a clean slate. You as an individual, could you say that that's the case?
No, if you look at the people around him, Dr. Harsha De Silva, I mean, he has there seems to be a core group working with him. Mr. Harsha De Silva seems to be working very closely with him. Mr. Iran Wickramaratne seems to be working very closely with him. So Mr. Harin Fernando, Mr. Ajit P. Pereira seem to be working very closely with him. None of them have corruption charges, not to my knowledge.
There's Sujiva Senasinghe who's working alongside Sajith Premadasa. There's Ravi Karunayaka who's working alongside Sajith.
In the end, Shamir, it's Mr. Premadasa who should handpick his team, and that will happen upon election. So I think it's better if you can ask that question from Mr. Premadasa as to how he will handpick
We're
his
talking
team.
about corruption. We're talking about corruption. I want to drag my attention to Harshana, now attorney at law. Harshana, you say that the JP has a clean slate, in particular NPP, or you didn't mention.
I will assist you. I know the confusion. I'll assist you.
Right, and you say that Andukumar Dissanayake has proven his might as far as a corruption-free politician is concerned. You just mentioned that a couple of seconds ago.
Yeah.
Let's look at the past records of the JVP. 2005 elections, 39 seats. Alongside Mahinda Rajapaksa, they were able to gain 39 seats. 2010, they contested with Sarath Fonseca, they were able to get 4 seats. 2015 elections, they were only able to get 4 seats. If we are talking about a corrupt-free political party, how couldn't they gain more than 4 seats, or let's say at least 20 seats in parliament?
Now, this is the thing we are working on. This is the thing we are working on, because right now, even in today's platform, you would see, unlike in the 2015 presidential platform, nobody's talking about doing things against corruption, right? We don't hear it from the UMP stage of catching criminals and thieves. Neither do we hear it from the Pohuttua stage. That is quite obvious. Why, right? So, this is the problem we have. We have fielded a candidate without any allegations of criminal charges or any conduct of dishonesty. But people feel in this country they should vote for a party who's likely to win, right? So now, even in 2015, the general elections, as you would recall, we did not contest with Sarath Fonseca, no, not from the zone. It contested separately as JVP. Now remember, it is ideal if you can get a JVP member and pose these questions.
Yeah.
As an NPP member, I'm just, because my duty is only towards Andhra Dissanayake, who's our candidate. But since you ask, I'm talking with general knowledge here. I believe what happened to JP at that time was that people feared that if the JP at that time got more seats, Gotabe might return to power. And the same kind of fear is operational even now, especially in the UMP voters' mind.
No, but the question to you is, Harshana, it's not about a corrupt-free nation anymore. It's about the acceptance an individual like Sajith Premadasa or Gotabe Rajapaksa or Mahesh Thiranayake or even Andukumar Dissanayake for that matter, and the other 31 candidates contesting the upcoming elections, to be very fair by all of them. It's about the acceptance, isn't it? can this individual be accepted in our community? Can this individual be a father figure? Can this individual be a statesman? Isn't that about this ultimate thinking? Can this person be accepted by society at the end of the day? Can Anurakumara Dissanayake be accepted as that person?
I'm asking, to answer that question, I will start with a question. I'd say, why cannot he be accepted? The reason being, first and foremost, if you're talking about an educated candidate, he has a degree in science, right? I mean, of course, we have spoken about it. He's a corruption-free man. We firmly believe the society need to change the way they think. Because unless they change the way they think, they're going to get the governments they've been getting for the last 70 years anyway. That is, in our mind, if we are justifying corruption, I mean, look at it. All the taxes we pay, indirect taxes on all the food items or whatever the services we have, is like very high. The reason being, when they empty the government coffers, they try to cover it up by increasing taxes on various goods. I am saying Anurakumara can be accepted, should be accepted. But however, we do not have enough, what you call, media coverage, quite unfortunately, the way we wanted it to be, to promote our cause. But I'm asking the people, why shouldn't he be accepted? What is so wrong with a man who does not steal any money? Most probably because, I don't know whether he's not wearing a suit or whatever. But the public need to understand, you judge people by their previous conduct. Now, Sajid Premadas is offering a lot of things in his campaign. But I'm saying, he was there in the previous government for the last 5 years too. He was a powerful deputy minister. He can't just get up and say, okay, when I come, I'll do this, I'll do that. Have you ever heard Sajid Premadasa saying that he was going to catch the bond thieves, or that whatever Rajapaksa did somewhere down the line was wrong? Sajid Premadasa had never taken a stand against anything while being in the government. He's been very quiet, minding his own business. Again, I accept the fact there are no allegations of corruption against him also, that I'll accept. But he was in a government, right? I mean, now the infamous bond scam, we have to accept these things. So what I'm saying is, if he was in the previous government, and to date he does not criticize the Rajapaksas for whatever the nepotism or whatever they had, he's very quiet about it, then why should anyone trust him to run the country and not Anurakumara Dissanayake? I don't know, because maybe Anura doesn't wear a nice suit and speak English, or has not gone to a posh school in Colombo. I don't know what the reasons are. But I see no reason. He's experienced.
Let's talk about Ranasinghe Premadasa for a minute. You speak about not being posh, not being able to speak.
I was just putting a rhetorical question. I was putting rhetorical questions.
But Ranasinghe Premadasa was one of the very successful presidents that Sri Lanka ever had, when he introduced the Gamudava project, the housing project that gave a lot of dwellings to the rural people of Sri Lanka, and is recognized as one of the change makers of the Sri Lankan political fora. So he was not posh either, but he was elected by the people.
1988-89 was quite different to what we're experiencing now. Because after 1977, only things started changing a little bit, becoming westernized and so on and so forth. Now, I just pose those questions, ask him, because we are also trying to find out what is the reason why people are saying he's not good.
With your permission, Harshana, can I pose that question to Rasika in turn?
Yes, please.
Rasika, why not someone who's not posh, who has the ultimate objective of making Sri Lanka prosperous,
I think
be elected
Mr. Premadasa cannot be considered, posh in that sense, because he's from the grassroots level. I mean, he started politics after the death of his father. He received a letter of appointment from Mr. Gavani Dissanayake in 1994 to be the organizer of Hambantota, and for nearly 25 years he has been working in Hambantota with the most with the poorer segments of our society. So I don't think Mr. Premadasa falls into this category. So I don't think that question is relevant, Shamir.
Right, Rasika, getting back to having a young president, the talk is all about having someone young, someone vibrant. We've seen this happening across the world. Let's take a look at Canada for an example, Trudeau. Let's take a look at France, Macron. We see change makers taking center stage as far as the world is concerned. And there lies Sajid Premadasa, and he comes to this equation because of those reasons. Anukumar Disanayak is only 50.
Mr. Premadasa is 52. So
why not?
50 and 52, I don't think there's a major difference.
Why not? Why not? If we're talking about youth, why not?
Yeah, so 50, 52, I don't see a major difference, but I think I understand your question. I think it's important to get a young person elected because a person of 52 can probably relate to the questions of the youth better because, I mean, 52-year-old man cannot be considered young, but he can understand their language. He can relate to them. He can understand their concerns. He understands where he can understand where their concerns are coming from. So
tell us a little bit about the tagline of. I want to get back to Harshan also on that. Unfortunately, we don't have a representative from the Sri Lanka Pojana Peramuna. Shied away last minute from attending the show. However, if we had that side of the story also, the show would have been complete to have someone else arguing and articulating the position of the Sri Lanka Pojana Peramuna as well, being one of the main political parties contesting at this election along with the others. Unfortunately, I need to reiterate once again that it's very unfortunate that we don't have a representative from the Sri Lanka Pojana Peramuna. However, at least next week on the show, we expect the participation of an SLPP member. I will go for a quick short commercial break, gentlemen, and then let's talk about more in depth about the policies, the tagline, and what do you all have in store for the country at the end of the day. We spoke about corruption, we spoke about the other side of the coin all this while. Let's talk about the head side of the coin as well after this short commercial break. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Let's talk a little bit about the Sri Lanka Pojana Peramuna now, and then let's talk about policy and so on and so forth. So, Rasika, my question to you is about how do you think Sajid Premadasa would act in the event he's elected president against corrupt activities that took place for 10 long years in Sri Lanka between 2005 and 2015, because we know for a fact that this was one of the focal points of the good governance campaign when they were elected to power. And no action was taken because there was no genuine political will by the UNP and even the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, which was leading the country for some time. But when Sajid Premadasa, hypothetically, if the case be, he's elected president, what steps would be taken?
And there's only way that he can and he should act
in the past regime?
Yes, I think first and foremost, investigations should continue without political interference. So preventing political interference and preventing various influences on the law enforcement system is the main thing that he would ensure, and that's how it should be done. These investigations should not be politically driven or politically orchestrated. It's unfair to expect politicians to handle or guide these investigations. So let law enforcement authorities handle these investigations.
But there was a lack of political will, Rasika, to be very fair, where those who were corrupt in the previous regime were not brought before the law or not punished for the mistakes or the offences they committed.
Is it because of the political will, or now in the case of Mr. Ocotber Rajapaksa, he has been going from one court to another to delay the hearing of these cases, for instance, the D.A. Rajapaksa case. So, I mean, what can politicians do in that sense? It's the judicial system that works.
And you all were elected because you all were elected to this position because you all want to promote democracy, and now that is taking center stage. My question to you right now would be, isn't a dictatorship the way to go about in a country like Sri Lanka, not a democracy?
Not really, Shamir, because dictatorship is a very dangerous path to take. We look at countries like Singapore and probably Malaysia and think, we also need an iron fist, rule with an iron fist. We need strongman leadership to drive the country forward. But there are so many other countries that failed. There are so many other countries across the world that ended up being failures. So we look at only probably two success stories, and we turn a blind eye to about 30 or 35 countries that completely failed because of this kind of leaders. So that is not the way to go. Democracy and strong institutions. That is what we can bring to the table, strengthen the institutional framework in the country so that the institutions can function without political interference, so that politicians shouldn't drive or they shouldn't guide these police investigations into corrupt activities. Let the law enforcement authorities perform their job without problems.
I want to talk to Harsha Nanakar, attorney at law representing the National People's Power. Harshana, it's rather unfortunate, as I've been reiterating on this on the show tonight, that not having a SLPP individual representing the policies and the vision of the party not being available. However, we need to carry out the show ex parte, as they say in courts. If you don't have the other party, you have to still talk about what is going on in the country as far as good governance, corruption, and so on and so forth is concerned. So, do you think, from the candidates who are now in the forefront, how confident are you that, let's take only Sajith Premadasa and Gotabaya Rajapaksa running this race, like the presidential system in the United States, hypothetically, let's assume so, who would you support?
Well, first of all, we are presuming that our party is not there.
Your party is not there. I'm saying hypothetically, just like the United States, the Republicans and the Democrats vying for the top post in the country. Let's take the SLPP and the UNP only in this race. Who would you support?
Well, now what's going to come forward now is a personal view. Because
course,
now...
no problem.
Now,
This
this
is
is
a
a
love
personal
to
view
make
that
a
is going to
personal
come.
view.
My personal view,
Yes,
right?
your personal view on the show,
Personal view.
attorney at law, Harsha Nanakar.
Firstly, I'll be one hell of a frustrated citizen. Having on both sides, one side, of course, I really don't want to say anything about Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa because his representative is not here. But otherwise, I would say, nowhere in the world, a man with about 8 different criminal cases running for the head job of a country. It never happens except for in this island. I don't know how it happens. But I think I know how it happens. The previous government mollycoddled these corrupt people, did not push enough. I think in your previous questions, you put that to him also. And also, I have a problem with Sajith Premadasa. Why? Because he's speaking, he's going to do this and that, as if he was not there in the last government. He was there for 4 or 5 years. But he never made a stand. He's now, I agree with my friend Rasika here, who said, we will do this and that, how we will not interfere, rule of law, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, that's what we want to do too. So I agree. Those are good things. But I'm telling you, when you look at the previous conduct of Mr. Premadasa, I'm not talking about Gotabaya Rajapaksa, his representative not here. Honestly, I don't want to vote for either of them. But now, you are telling me, because see, whatever Sajith is saying, he's not going to do. Because the people around him, actually pointed out earlier, people like Lavikar Naik, and you mentioned some other names also, they are the ones who are going to be in the cabinet. When Gotabaya wins, those around him are going to be in the cabinet. So either way, the country is not going to survive with another set of people sucking the lifeblood out of our treasury. But, because you want me to tell, if those two are there whom I should support, I would say, despite all my criticism for this, the current government, which I will never vote for, but in that hypothetical situation which you have placed me, I have to answer, I would say, during this government, we had the chance to express freely what we thought. There were no white vans. There were no abductions. We could criticize. We can be open. Now, that freedom of speech is one aspect of the previous government I personally enjoyed. So, therefore, if those are the only two, as I rightly said, I'll be very frustrated individual, but if for hypothetically answering your question, yeah, because I'd rather have at least one liberty when I know the other side is not going to give me any. So yes, that's the answer.
They are saying Sajith Premadasa.
That's what I said.
Right.
For that hypothetical question.
Right. So I open the floor for questions from our journalists. Let's start off with Deshan.
Thank you, Samir. I want to speak to both of you, and I want to give both of you an opportunity to express your opinions on this particular statement. Now, rule of law, it's something that within the politics of this country, we see given many different definitions. I want to bring to your attention, Rasika, a few statements that were made. One of which is, I know how to make the law and I know how to break the law. And also another statement where Deputy Solicitor General Suhada Gamlat made a statement about how he was directed in terms of, or he was asked to make certain decisions to go a certain way. I'm sure, Mr. Harsha, you have also seen this, and why I asked you that is because something very interesting he says is that he attended a meeting at Temple Trees attended by your presidential candidate, Kumara Dissanayake. Now, if there's a genuine commitment to a rule of law, if there's a genuine commitment to this, if there's a genuine commitment to putting people behind bars, don't forget that the UNP's General Secretary said, අපිට ඕනේ විදිහට දේශපාලන පරිගැනීම් කරන්න බැරි වුණා. Come on,
slip of the tongue, or do you think he actually...
Sorry? No, I'm asking you. I'm asking for your opinion.
Yeah.
I'm not on the panel. What I'm asking you is, all these things point in one direction. Can you still beat the drum and say, oh, we're not going to get involved, we should leave it to the judiciary, when people who are actively involved in prosecuting those who are responsible are coming out and saying, politicians are coming and telling them who to prosecute, who to take action against, and who to try to put behind bars?
Yeah, so let me start with Miss Dilrukshi Das Wickramasinghe's statement. I can make the law and break the law. That is an alarming statement. And it was followed by an investigation by the Public Services Commission, and she was interdicted. And another person was appointed in her place.
Yeah.
So again, the system is working, which is progress. Had it happened under the previous government, she wouldn't have been... she wouldn't have faced any of these repercussions. So again, the institutions have been strengthened. So let's look at the positives. I mean, she's no longer functioning in the capacity of...
Fine, let's look at the positives of Mr. Gamlat's statement.
Oh, Mr. Gamlat, yes. So Mr. Gamlat, on August 31st, if memory serves me right, Mr. Gamlat attended a meeting of SLPP lawyers, which held at Shangri-La, one of the top hotels in Colombo. So Mr. Gamlat, at this point, is affiliated with the SLPP. So we can't rule that out when analyzing his statement. So I'm not aware whether those meetings actually happened or not, but we have to understand where Mr. Gamlat's statements are coming from. He's officially affiliated with the SLPP. So
Dilrukshi Das Wickramasinghe saying, if I had known that I would never take press charges against Gotabaya Rajapaksa, why did she say that? Is she affiliated to a political party?
I think Desha now, she came up with a statement soon after this event, and I think she later, I'm not sure whether she deleted it later, but she said it's a part from, she indicated, as far as I know, that it's a part of a long conversation, and they have sort of doctored the final clip to, project it in this particular way. So I'm not exactly sure what she meant or anything, because if it's a long conversation without, listening to the entire clip, we can't jump into conclusions. Yeah, but her statement and the fact that she actually had a conversation with Mr. Nishanka Senadipati, you cannot justify that under any circumstances. So
absolutely. Harsha,
can I answer that? See, I got the question.
That is exactly what I was going to ask.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, first of all, that Kumar was there, a discussion, and interfering with him is I don't think he actually spoke the truth there, because, see, the JVP, not the NPP, at that time, filed nearly 135 cases against corrupt individuals.
Correct.
And they have all the rights to ask what's happening with the cases. It was done in the open. As far as, by the way, Kumara Dissanayake has explained this on a couple of occasions now, that no such interference ever took place other than asking what's happening with the cases.
Yeah.
Because in one instance, again, remember, I'm not privy to this conversation. It was Kumara Dissanayake who was there.
Yeah.
And we investigated what he said. And we jolly well know he was not interfered with by Kumara or, for that matter, anyone else.
Yeah.
But the other problem is this is what my key problem. Now, this happened when he was in the Attorney General's department. The time he's making this statement, he has resigned from the Attorney General department. At least 1.5 years later, he's making this statement. So if there was actual pressure on him, and then he was fearful of his job, then he could, when he gave resignation, he could have said that these things did happen. Now my question arises, why did he wait for 1.5 years to come out with this? And how it was so well timed to come after Dilrukshi's fiasco? and then couple that with his seen in the SLPP lawyers Vietmaga program. So when you put all these things together, I wonder whether Mr. Gamla is being very sincere in his statement or whether he's serving a political purpose. But as far as Andhra Kumar is concerned, I know for a fact it didn't happen. But yes, we did ask what's happening with our cases. We did ask. We have the right to ask that. But never ever interfered. And also I would like to add here, we will never take revenge. That's not our business. Our business is to make sure courts function smoothly without interference. We guarantee the independence of the judiciary. We want people to be found guilty according to law, not according to some politician who's staying from a stage in Anuradhapura, that when he comes into power on the 17th of November, he will discharge all the accused. I don't know whether he's contesting to become the president or contesting to become the Chief Justice of this country, right? We do not do that. We do not take revenge. In fact, our candidate has said from the stage, when we come into power, we will give 2 months for everybody to return whatever they have stolen. But whatever they have legitimately earned, please keep it for yourself. But whatever you have stolen, you return. Because we firmly believe even formulating new legislation to recover this money, not just putting people behind bars. What's the point? You must recover the money for the treasury. And also, putting a person behind bars or not is the job of the judiciary. It is not the job of the politician. Politician's job is to make sure the judiciary functions independently, democratically, without interference from politicians, which did not happen in the previous regimes. So those are my answers to the questions.
Mr. Jakodi, Shamir already raised this point that Mr. Sajid Premadasa is considered one of the young leaders. And as you're well aware, this election, there's going to be a fresh lot of voters, a youth vote which is easily over 1 million votes there. And this group of voters is highly influenced by social media, and they are not so interested in traditional party loyalties. So they are not necessarily going to vote for who their parents voted for. How do you think, or how is Mr. Premadasa going to tackle this youth vote? What policies do they have for the youth? And also just bearing in mind, so far his performance on social media has been bit both ways. They are not impressed, for example, by certain speeches he has made regarding his English being a bit over the top. So how is he going to tackle them?
Now, about youth votes, there are 1.5 million young voters who will vote for the first time in a presidential election, which is remarkable. At the same time, I think on both sides, block vote, what we consider Kapuat, Kola, Kapuat, Nil kind of votes are dwindling. Numbers are coming down. So more and more votes are, more and more people are becoming, they are coming to the center. So they will examine what the policies are. They will look at manifestos. Probably they'll listen to media. They'll read media reports carefully. And at that particular moment, they will decide on the candidate without any strong party affiliations. So Mr. Premadasa will offer, as our tagline says, Ekwa Idiriyata is the tagline. That means, we will remain united as a country, as communities. When all communities will stay together and we will march forward. So keeping that in mind, Mr. Premadasa will present his plans to power a high value production economy, which we will achieve through increased investments on R&D, IT, especially innovation, areas like that. So I think that is where the youth can join the UNPs, join hands with the UNP and be partners in this journey.
Does the education system, or is it able to provide or supply this skill set required for these jobs you're talking about?
Education system, I think it has to undergo major reforms. If you look at, we talk about, creating, inspiring innovation and investing in R&D and IT sectors. Now, Sri Lanka's digital literacy, if you look at in urban areas, it's just over 50% as far as I know. And in rural areas, it stands around somewhere around 40%, and in estate areas, it's 17%. So there should be a serious attempt to, a comprehensive attempt to increase digital literacy, and UNP started this process with the smart classroom concept. I mean, it was carried out in a selected number of schools, like covering in schools that are considered privileged schools. But that's a start. But this will move forward, and that will complement UNP's policies on creating a high-value production.
So we have a question from a viewer to Harshana Nanakar, attorney at law. representing the NPP. The viewer drags your attention to the statement that you made about Sajith Premadasa being ignorant of the corruption that took place within the UNP, like the bond scam and so on and so forth, and he did not take a stand when all this took place. So the question to you is that Sajith Premadasa at that time would not have had the say within the party leadership at that point. So he waited until his time came, and that's how he was able to secure his position as the UNP's presidential candidate. So is it fair for you to point the finger at Sajith Premadasa in that case? For an example, the viewer also says, during the Rajapaksa regime, if such an incident would have taken place, there wouldn't have even have been a fair trial. We have seen in the past, these are my own comments now, we have seen in the past Ajit Diwar Cabral handling the central bank and how the Greek bond scam came into play and so on and so forth. There was no investigation whatsoever. To answer that question.
Yeah, first of all, I don't know whether the viewer has sent it to you.
Yeah.
I never said Premadasa was ignorant about what happened.
Yeah.
He jolly well knew what was going on and they didn't take a stand. That's my point.
Yeah, but he could not have taken a stand.
Right, okay, fine.
Being in the UNP, because you have to respect the party leadership at that point. And that's the question to you.
Well, from a practical point of view, yeah, that viewer's question is very reasonable and why he did what he did. But again, my point is this. When you're doing politics, you must take a stand on what is right, not what is convenient to you. Yes, I do agree. During the Rajapaksa regime, if somebody takes a stand like that, not only the party, you don't know where you'll end up. But we brought in a change, a somewhat change after 2015. What I'm saying is, not only on corruption, no, just tell me any issue that Premadasa took a stand on. Now I recently heard him saying, X and so far, I will review all these things and I will make sure that only favorable terms will be entered into this. Look,
but isn't that the reason? Isn't that the reason?
Can I complete that answer?
Yeah.
But, you know, when those were signed, he was in the cabinet too. He knows all these things. So now he can't say, oh, I didn't have the say, so I can't say it. He never voiced. Now take Ranjan Ramanayaka of that party. The man talks. The man talks.
Just because
he criticizes.
But
he talks and tells about corruption.
Well, but that's a wrong theory to bring into play. You know,
No, I'm not bringing a theory. I'm just telling you an example.
Yeah, but just because one person is vociferous or vocal about something
what
that
I'm
does
saying
not
is, Ajit
mean
doesn't have to be vociferous, okay?
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, when did he make a stand? Okay, fine. Forget about criticizing them. When did Sajith ever say, I will catch the thieves who stole public money, even of the Rajapaksa regime and this regime? If he has said it anywhere, I'll apologize. So, in the party, he can't criticize. Okay, fine. He can't talk about the bond scam, we'll say it like that. He can't. But he could have easily criticized what the Rajapaksas did. Did he do that? No, he did not. So that's why I'm saying.
1 month to go.
1 month to go.
1 month to go until the campaign closes for the presidential election. He might.
Well, at least he should listen to what I'm saying and say it. So he will be believed.
I just want to interject. I want to actually pose a bit of a different question to Harshan, but before I come to you, I want to ask one last question from Rasika Jayakodi. Rasika, who's the chairman of the Swan Alliance? The alliance. Who's the chairman of the alliance?
General Secretary Shyamala, chairman. I can't really remember. It's
Is
DNF.
it not Mr. Ravi Karnanayaka?
I'm not certain about it, Deshan. To be honest, I'm not certain about it.
I just want your opinion. Mr. Ravi Karnanayaka has been accused of certain misdealings. There have been a number of senior members of the United National Party also accused of misdealings, I would say. Realistically, do you see certain members who are at the forefront of your campaign, and I mean this for the SLPP as well, it's unlikely that key people at the forefront of your campaign who are essentially working day and night, toiling hard for you to become the president, it's unlikely, isn't it, that you'll turn around and say, look, you've committed a crime, I'm going to have charges pressed against you, or I'm going to push for investigations to be brought in.
In the end, Deshan, it all boils down to whether the institutions are wrong enough to catch the offenders. It's not Mr. Premadasa who, like a policeman who, goes to their homes and knocks on the door and, catches these thieves. It doesn't work that way. The institutions, law enforcement authorities, that will function and bring these culprits to book.
Right.
But
what Mr. Premadasa can do.
In the defense of Rasika, I think, if you did pose that question to a SLPP candidate
Which is why I did mention Samir.
yeah.
The SLPP is the same thing. The former
Same thing.
president.
If you take a look at individuals like mine,
what we can guarantee is non-interference in the law enforcement system, so that the system will work, like in the case of Ms. Dilrukshida's Vikramasinghe, the system will work and bring the culprits to book.
But let's talk about policy now. Let's park what we spoke about with regard to corruption. Let's talk about policy now. Tell us, let's start off with Harshana now. Harshana, tell us, what is the economic policy? What is the education policy? Because we don't have that book even to download on the website.
Well, I mean, it's here.
Tell us.
I can give it to you, but I'm sorry it's not being downloaded at the moment.
But tell us a little bit about the policy of the NPP to drive Sri Lanka in the next 5 years.
No, as I think I kind of, with the economic aspect of it, I think I kind of answered somewhat a little bit about it.
Yeah.
And as I told you, this policy has been prepared by nearly 180 individuals together, not by one person. And also the economics, I can only touch on the basic frame and not the facts and figures, as you said, the percentages. But however, one thing for sure we can say is that, firstly, we have to renegotiate most of the loans to see whether we can reschedule some of the loans of this paying back. Secondly, we need to increase local production. And to do that, we have to really rely on human capital of this country. Right now, out of the 11 billion income we are having, about 8 billion comes from domestic workers and overseas workers, especially the Middle Eastern sector. So what I'm saying is, we should have an education system, because right now, we have about 10,000 schools, and about good 49% of them has less than 200 students in them, because that's the disparity that people do not want to put some children to these schools because there are no facilities. So that's why we have promised that we will revamp the curriculum to make a better citizen, plus to create the workforce we need. But these cannot be just limited to all policy are just writings. It has to be actually implemented. We firmly believe that education is there, one, to create the workforce we need, two, to create the better citizen we want. So it's a balance of the two. However, in schooling, we have serious problems, because right now, when 97% of the population enters schools, right, those who drop out, by the first year of A-levels, nearly 80% has dropped out. So only 8%, according to 2018 statistics, only about 8%, right, actually pass A-levels. And out of which, again, about very small percentage get opportunities in higher education. So we have to have a system. But if you look at countries like South Korea or Singapore, wherever, that rate is very high. We have too many dropouts. Financial reasons, not having access to schools. About 20% of our schools in this country does not even have a running water. You see, that's why sometimes when they were trying to give tabs, we say we'd rather give them some toilets. It's better, because let's get the first thing first. So we need to improve education, and we have promised that we can establish a school every 2 kilometers for a child. Because remember, schools are not things that are going to come up suddenly, no. One second, sir, I'll finish that question, sorry. Basically, if you take the statistics, if you take a district, you know, say 2020, this number of children are born. So you know in 5 years, you need this amount of space in schools. So therefore, we want to, because we firmly believe, right, the biggest asset we have are the people, and they need to be educated. So instead of housemates, we will send doctors and engineers and earn more money for this country. That's our plan.
But Deshan, just give me, mate, I want to hear the thoughts of Rasika as well, and then I'll give you an opportunity to pose questions. Rasika, same question posed to you.
Yes. Yeah. So I agree with Harshana to some degree on increasing local production. Yes, so that is going to be one of the core components of the UNP's economic policy also for the next 5 years. At the same time, we need to look at how we create high value production. Do we go down the traditional path and go further down in this rut, or we come out of it? Do we come out of it by investing in high value production? For instance, in the size of the IT market in Bangalore is USD like 150 billion USD. So that is where we have to cash in on. So that's why Mr. Premadasa constantly talks about innovation and his interest in developing the IT sector. So as I told you earlier, the education sector also should be reformed accordingly. There has to be a strong focus on especially science, tech, and tech, IT, engineering, and English, to power this transformation. Otherwise, it will be pointless. And also, Harshan, I think it's very important to compartmentalize Sri Lanka's problems, especially in the education sector. For instance, we have schools that do not even have basic infrastructure, basic facilities. At the same time, if we compromise on projects like smart classroom, just because we don't have basic infrastructure, that will not get us anywhere. We will not make any progress. So it's important to compartmentalize these problems, make the right investments. So we should proceed with initiatives like smart classroom concept. At the same time, there should be investments in basic infrastructure, but we should compartmentalize very clearly, otherwise we'll mix everything up and we will not make any progress.
Can I please add something to what he said, if it is not too much? Sorry.
Yeah.
Now,
very quickly.
Very quickly. I'll be very quick on this one. Now, we spoke about IT and artificial intelligence. Now, IT revolution started in the West in the 60s and 70s, right? So when that IT revolution started in the 70s, India picked on very early as the 80s. They taught their people. They had a vision and a plan what the country wanted in 10 years, 15 years. That's why we have Silicon Valleys in Bangalore, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. That's so big. Right now, we have missed the bus big time. Because in this country, we are introducing IT as a school subject to the curriculum only in 2014. Now we have missed that bus big time. Now, I wish that we can do IT, but there are other things we can do. But since it's a limited one, I'm just telling we missed the bus big time.
Harshana, the IT revolution really came into play in 1957 with Alan Turing Institute in Scotland. That was the evolution of deep machine learning in the world. Alan Turing is the...
But I thought in the 70s also there was some...
Yeah, so there was
in the West.
Yeah, there was, but India is considered to be the AI garage of the West in terms of... but there's always room for countries like Sri Lanka to develop, because we have some very good universities like the Motor University that produces some excellent algorithm-based scientists.
Not for a moment do I say IT should not be ignored. I'm just saying how backward we were. How backward we were to introduce only it in 2014.
Yeah, but it's never too late, Harshana. It's never too late for innovation.
Before I hand it over back to you, Shamir, I want to pose a question to both you gentlemen, and it's a subject very close to my heart, and it's something that, as a young person, I feel needs to be given a great deal of thought. And like Rasika said, young voters are going to be extremely crucial at this election, because they tend to be the block of votes that tend to float, and would be the block of votes available to both sides or even all three sides to potentially increase their voter bank. Now, the idea of social justice, the idea of equality in marriage, in sexual orientation, LGBT, what is the opinion of the NPP? What is the opinion of the United National Party?
About?
Sexual LGBT equality.
We have been very open about it. We consider everybody as a human being, and they should be treated equal before the law. Because our constitution says that everybody is equal before the law. They should get the same. Other than that, they're human. For us, that's it.
I understand that it may be a bit difficult for you, not being an MP or part of the parliamentary group, but being an activist within the United National Party, what is the United National Party's stance, you think?
United National Party stance is every person is equal. I mean, that is the fundamental policy. At the same time, to make reforms on this front, we need to have consultations with all stakeholders, and we need to engage with everyone involved in this, including religious groups and LGBTQ groups.
As the policy, the NPP have come out and said that they are supporting LGBT equality.
We are decriminalizing some other penal code sections. We are decriminalizing homosexuality.
Is there a similar viewpoint within the United National Party, or
UNP
is it
attempted to do that a couple of years ago? There was an attempt within the cabinet, but it was shut down.
Yeah, and it was there was stiff opposition.
Yes, there's stiff opposition. So that's why I said we need to go for consultations. We need to raise awareness. We need to build consensus on this, and then come up with a solid, final solution that will ensure the rights of everyone. So that should be that's the UNP's policy on this.
Shamir, over to you.
Right, then we go in for a short commercial break. When we come back in this brand new set, it's the final round. We're talking about why Anil Kumar Dissanayake, why Sajid Premadasa, and why not someone else. All this and more after this short commercial break. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Harshana Nanakar, attorney at law representing the National People's Power. Harshana, why should it be Anurakumar Dissanayake and why not anyone else?
This country is in the current predicament because of the policies followed by UMP and Sri Lanka in different names for the last 70 years. You need a fresh look. We have a new set of policies. And above all, I believe Anurakumar Dissanayake is capable. He has an education. He's intelligent. He has a proven track record of honesty and integrity, and who's willing to work in a team. So therefore, and also the voting public, especially the younger voters, would vote for a non-corrupt person. Whereas if you look at, I don't want to really say this because the SLPP person is not here, but everybody knows those who are around Gotabaya Rajapaksa has so many cases. Even Gotabaya Rajapaksa himself has cases. So what I'm trying to say is, and in fact, SLPP is not even a political party. It's a simple front organized to get protection from the cases. So there's no reason to vote for Gotabaya. And why should not one vote for Sajid? He has nothing called a new vision. He's simply speaking some beautiful, nice words, artificial intelligence and various things. But to me, they don't make sense. And also, you don't have to believe a person who was in the last government, a powerful minister and in the cabinet, and did not make a stand on anything. So therefore, compared to those two, Anurakumar is capable of delivering forward, and there's been no instance where Anurakumar has lied to the public. So for that reason, I would say he's the man for the job.
Right. Thank you very much, Harshan Nanakar, attorney at law. You had 38 seconds to go. However, you ended early. I now move my attention to Rasika Jayakudi, political commentator affiliated to the United National Party. You get 2 minutes each, 2 minutes as well. Why should it be Sajid Premadasa and why not anyone else?
Mr. Premadasa is one of the two candidates who can actually win this election. So that should be one of the main reasons. So he's actually a candidate who will win this. So who can win this? At the same time, he doesn't have corruption allegations. He has a relatively clean track record, and he's a person who believes in democracy and pluralism. He's not a person who believes in an iron fist rule. So he's not a person who is willing to crush the democratic rights of people to usher in development. He doesn't believe in bringing in development at the expense of democracy or bringing in democracy at the expense of development. He's a person who wants to create a balance between freedom and democracy and development and create an inclusive society. At the same time, he's a person who's relatively young, 52 years old, and he's energetic. As I told you earlier, he'll campaign across the country during this election, addressing over 150 meetings. Because of his background, he can listen to the problems of the youth. He can relate to the problems of the youth. He can give solutions to their problems. So considering all this, I think with the options we have at this election, Mr. Sajid Premadasa is the most practical and viable choice for the public.
Right. Thank you very much. Rasika Jayakudi, political commentator affiliated to the UNP. Thank you very much, Harshan, for joining us this evening on the show. Thank you very much, Rasika, for joining us on this show. I wish I could say the same thing with the SLPP. Unfortunately, Prem Abdulawat excused himself just 45 minutes away from the show. So I wished, fervently hoped that we did hear their side of the story as well on the show tonight. Thank you very much, Shehan. Thank you very much, Deshan, for joining us on the show. It's always nice to hear, as Deshan always says, I am the young person in this room. To hear someone young
about your AI background.
And also, by the way, thank you very much for having me and my friend here. Thank you very much for the opportunity given.
A pleasure was all ours, Harshan, to have the two of you on our show tonight. Will another presidential election in Sri Lanka really change anything? Only time will tell. I leave you tonight with a quote, as I always do. Elections remind us not only of the rights, but the responsibilities of citizenship in a democracy. Go on the 16th, go to the polling booth, vote for the candidate who you think can steer the country towards a new direction. Take care and good night.